Welcome to RevOps Revolution, where we focus on changing the game for driving revenue. I'm your host, Jesse Morris, and each episode we take a look at the different areas that affect change and drive revenue across your organization. If this is your first time joining us, please subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episode. Here's to the revolution. Welcome to another day of the revolution. I'm your host, Jesse Morris, and today I'm excited to welcome Elio Narciso on the line and podcast. Super excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jesse. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Elio and I got introduced by a fellow mutual connection in the VC space, and we hit it off while geeking out over agentic AI. Anybody knows me, man, I love that space, and so does Elio. She's a serial entrepreneur, currently co-founded and runs an AI company called ScaleStack that I personally find fascinating. And they're solving some key challenges companies face around being able to utilize agentic AI and automation across an entire organization, which is a problem I've been trying to solve a lot as well. Elio, super excited to have you here. Thanks again for joining. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. This is great. And yes, we did geek out a lot in our first meeting. So this is the output of that, or one of the first outputs. Glad to be here. My name is Elio. I co-founded ScaleStack about 3.5 years ago. Originally from Italy, but I've been here in the US for the past 20 years. Came here for to do my MBA, and then loved the entrepreneurial aspect of the US and the mentality of building, and never left. Happy to be here.
That's awesome, man. So today we're going to geek out a little bit more for the audience around agentic and AI, and I think where things are headed. I think, one of the things I personally, and I think a lot of us do, maybe not everybody, but I would say I personally always look at entrepreneurs, especially in the AI space, is kind of like the dream, right? It's the thing I would say a lot of us that are kind of more creative minds, problem solvers, aspire to. You've done a couple of businesses now at this point, but in particular, I'm really curious around ScaleStack, because I do think it's funny. I've been looking for 6 months for what you guys have, and it's kind of random that you and I kind of ran into each other. So it's always funny when I come across these things. I'm really curious, when you started ScaleStack, what led to the formation? What did you see in the market? What was the problem you guys set out to solve?
I think I also agree that origin stories are the best. I was commenting earlier this week on somebody else's post about why did I do this? I think it's so important. Every origin story is so important, and so like many stories, I think it begins with frustration. That is not something that you experience once or twice, but that you regularly feel this frustration, and then eventually say, I just have to do something about it. And for me, I've always had in all of the companies that I started, but also meaningfully at AWS, where I spent almost 5 years before founding ScaleStack. Sales, BD, go-to-market, partnership roles, right? So a CEO, co-founder, or VP of BD, and all of that stuff. And at the companies that I started or co-founded or was involved with, that were fast-growing startups, whatever, the messiness of the go-to-market seemed inevitable, right? Seemed you have to deal with it. Nothing is perfect. Everything is breaking. You're running fast. You're growing fast. It's a normal feature. But then when I arrive at Amazon, that everybody thinks rightly so, it's an amazing company, well run. My assumption was all systems are going to run perfectly, and the data is going to flow into my hands magically. and that wasn't the case. I had this amazing role at Amazon, at AWS, where since I had so much experience with startups, I was tasked with building what's now called the AWS Global Startup Program, which is a program to support the go-to-market of mid to late stage so like Series B and up companies that are built on AWS. They wanted more help to grow faster. And so in itself, the program was focusing on like go-to-market. And so that was interesting to see like how companies experience their go-to-market. But one of the problems that I became extremely frustrated is that, like, this was an invite program. So like you had to get invited by AWS. And so the invite came from analyzing data. And so the idea was, okay, AWS has a lot of data. Our CRM Salesforce has like tons of data. So let me plug that data and see, how to prioritize like the companies that we want to invite. The data was awful. Like the data in the CRM was terrible. Despite the access to so much like client data and like consumption and information stuff, the data was like super outdated, wrong, like duplicated accounts, invalid. And so what I ended up after like trying to build like reporting off of Salesforce was like I had my own spreadsheet with tens of thousands of companies that we wanted to monitor, my team and I. And then we built like little Zapiers connectors to the Crunchbase, the LinkedIn, the, whatever, Zoom info, and try to make sense of that data manually, basically on this spreadsheet. And then like my manager and I would like review the list every like couple of weeks to decide like what companies should be invited. And it was literally like manually researching all of this data. And so that was the frustration. But the frustration extended also to the companies that we were supporting, because we were helping them in co-marketing, co-selling, and they all had the same problems. Oh, like we need more leads. And they had a lot of leads in their CRM, but they were not like clean and, put together so that they could actually leverage them. Oh, we need like to better understand our ICP, but they already have spent like several years in market and had a lot of data they could not make sense. And so all of this was the frustration that is not just during Amazon, it was like it preceded, but like my assumption was it's just that like it's a fact of nature for early stage companies. And so this was 2021, and I started working with my co-founder on like an MVP, and then left AWS in the mid 22 and solely focused on ScaleStack, and here we are.
That's awesome, man. I agree with you. I think the origin story, they're a lot of fun to see, and you're right. A lot of times it's born out of the frustration side of it. And as somebody who has gone into multiple companies to fix the underlying data, I have yet to walk into a company yet that's like, to your point, where you'd expect it to be. And I think that's where a lot of the stuff, I think that what you guys are building and some of the things I've been working through as well can be really impactful, obviously on the agentic side, to help streamline some of that. So I want to shift gears a little bit. You now been in business for a few years. You've started now seeing, uh, different companies trying to adopt AI, and I'd be curious actually to look at kind of two different types of companies within that scenario. One, what is a company that you actually have landed and brought on board? What are some of the challenges they have with actually rolling out AI? And then the second part of my question, I can follow back up on it, is what about a company that didn't come on board that wanted to do this, maybe just said we're not ready yet, and what was some of the reasons behind it, and what maybe advice do you have around that? It was a three-part question.
Yeah, so let me start from the first, and then maybe you will need to help me with the
For
other
sure.
two. Like
For
the
sure.
first, I think is super interesting, and we have learned a lot. Like we are now in 2.5 years building on AI, so like it starts to be a relevant amount of time, right?
Right.
And I think that the learning has been that there was a rush when like Gen AI first came on board to like, oh, we're gonna like automate like the SDR. Oh, we're gonna like completely like robotize like the last mile. And we did that mistake too. And so together with one of our customers, MongoDB, we rush to build a framework which we now also sell, but it's changed like in the way it works, called Spotlight. And Spotlight was basically jointly developed with MongoDB because They wanted to use AI to help the last mile. Oh, we need to help like SDRs to send more emails by like, quickly like putting together like the text of the email based on insights that we have in our CRM and that maybe we can collect from other data sources. The end product was very interesting, but it was essentially like, enabling SDRs to write like emails faster, personalized for that company. um, the problem were like several, and the first one is always usually like connected to like the human workflow. It required like the reps to experience yet another interface, yet another screen, and that was bad. And that's like it went against like some of the closely held beliefs that we have a skill stack, which is we want to be this middleware. But because of the excitement around AI, we also did that mistake and said, okay, let's build a screen that like rep can quickly like put together an email and like that puts spotlight on the key data points that you want to know about that company or that person and send that email at scale. The emails were really good, but the problem was adding the screen. And then the other big problem was that when we plugged like again like the data from the CRM, it was bad. And so there was a lot of work that we had to do to like clean all of the lead data. And we were already helping MongoDB on making sense of account data. So we were comfortable with that. But the whole like lead area was like super dirty, like, lots of wrong contact data. So that like, you would send emails to emails that don't exist anymore, or like wrong person, or like, the email field was in the name field and vice versa. So stuff like that. And so the learning from that was actually there is so much work which we call busy work, manual work, like work that frankly is not that great and boring, but that needs to be done. And it is so essential, where actually leveraging AI is great because you can delegate to agents the cleaning, the enrichment, the prioritization, the making sense of the data. And there was an artist that a few months ago went viral, and she said, I want AI to do my laundry while I write my poetry, and not vice versa. And I think it's very true. Like, I forget her name, unfortunately. I need to look it up. But the use of AI, AI is faster, can process data like at incredible speed, never tires, and like there is no distinction between boring work or like creative work. It's basically the same. And so why not like concentrating, and the efforts on AI, not on the last mile, which involves like engagements between humans. And like after a while, we realize that, oh, I can detect when an email is written by AI, and the probability of responding to that email are like very close to zero. When instead we can deploy AI to fix the mess that exists today in like 100% of the companies we speak to, and concentrating AI there. And so that was the learning for us. We rush like everybody else, or like many other people, into the last mile, and then realize that the original hypothesis, which is we want computers and machines to work for humans and not the other way around, so that automating and leveraging AI to do the work that we don't like to do and that we always push back. And so that's how we end up with like bad CRMs, because this is, like, okay, let me remove the duplicates. Okay, shit, what is the logic? How do I implement it? And then like, all the fields that I need to properly enrich, getting data from multiple data sources, and then maybe doing some research to fill the gaps. All of that, it's a fantastic use case for using AI. And that's where we are maniacally focusing right now.
That's awesome. That's a good story. And I think when you look at that, it is interesting. I loved, I haven't heard that saying that lady had said too about, I'd rather it do the washing versus the
Yeah, the
writing,
laundry.
which actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to use that going forward. I want to shift a little bit within this category though. Again, of talking about maybe the clients or prospects that you've had that didn't move forward. What were some of the barriers to them being able to roll out AI within their organization?
Great question. So I think that we see like several factors. So typically we work with larger companies, so mid-market and up, and our product has been developed with like the go-to-market ops people in mind. So people in RevOps, sales ops, marketing ops. That it's a category of jobs that is fast growing because of like all of the stuff that needs to be done on systems processes, but it's also, if done well, a very strategic role. And so the companies where we win are typically the companies where the RevOps, marketing ops, sales ops teams are powerful and heard in the organization, which means that they have a strategic role. They are not relegated to like being systems or like or just systems or just processes or just like ticket handlers. Because what we observe is that like when the teams are like perceived that way, or maybe they don't have yet a strong leadership in the go-to-market ops team, they quickly like evaporate in an ocean of like tickets and priorities and quickly become overwhelmed, and it's very difficult for them to like lift their heads up and say, hey, we need to like do something different if we want to obtain different outcomes. And so we have lost deals where like that was the situation where maybe, so the go-to-market ops team should be like equal partners with the sales and marketing teams, should have equal voice to the CRO and CMO. If that doesn't happen, if they get crushed and like, the VP of sales treats like their ops people as like, hey, like, do this for me, usually the results are suboptimal, that like they relent, they say yes too much, or they never say no, and maybe they build based on the inputs of like the sales and marketing teams, and then like there is usually a bloat of systems and tools that nobody understands. There is no like enablement that like helps like the teams to achieve their goals. So that's our observation, because the reality of all of this is that the status quo is clearly not satisfying. And like in the age of it, we use AI to build our platform and to get to where we want to get, but AI is also like a huge trigger and motivator, because in the age of AI, like outcomes are disproportionately impacted by data. So maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, up to then, before AI, let's say, or the new iteration of AI, uh, answering, oh yeah, my CRM data is terrible and it's like, out of date. And, I try to do something like once a year when we do the sales planning, was like an okay answer, like inevitable, because also it was difficult to do it. I don't think we could have done what we're doing at ScaleStack without AI. Just with automation, I don't think we could have done it. But now in the age of AI, your next competitor maybe is going to actually clean their data, enrich it for real, aligning it to their ICP, their go-to-market strategy. They're going to prioritize like really well all of their sales and marketing efforts and become very precise. And so like convert better, grow faster. And so you're left behind. And so we think that right now is an unacceptable answer, or like, that's a fact of life, that my CRM is bad. It should be like where people talk about the CRM as like the source of truth, but then they don't trust that truth. And so what truth is the truth that you don't trust? So that's our observation, that The go-to-market ops team needs to be strategic. If they are strategic, they are equal partners in building for go-to-market and revenues with sales and marketing teams that they serve. And that's where we are winning. When like they are overwhelmed and like always say yes, there is no way for them to like think strategically and actually change the status quo.
Got it. Really helpful. And I mean, it makes sense at the end of the day. I think both points you said, one around the data quality piece, which actually I think is where agentic, to your point around like most of us find that super boring. I actually think you could leverage agentic to really help clean things up as a potential first use case. But secondly, I mean, you're right around the influence piece, right? Which is is RevOps viewed as a partner, and potentially even right hand versus essentially an assistant, a glorified assistant operations, right? Which I think is a key piece of it. What are some of the other use cases that you're seeing have substantial and high impact within those three categories?
I mean, like the four use cases that we map out typically are like CRM hygiene, which involves lots of things. Involves also like, do I have the right map of hierarchies between the accounts, parent, child, sibling? Do I have like a clean slate, no duplicated accounts, so that all contacts flow into the right account? So it involves many things. So CRM hygiene is one. The other is account prioritization, so that like involves also many other things like territory mapping, time calculation, distribution of like the accounts across reps, and then like prioritization of those accounts on a regular basis. An area that I've been like surprised that is growing very fast for us is the lead prioritization, because my assumption was there are a lot of solutions for this that over the years have been like coming to market. But really, the same problem exists there. Because I think, what is the key innovation of SkillStack is that orchestrating the data or unifying the data or making sense of the data is not an abstract concept. It only makes sense, or even enrichment. The word enrichment, it's usually, oh, like, let me buy ZoomInfo. And we love ZoomInfo, right? So it's a great partner and stuff. But enrichment is not, let me buy data from ZoomInfo and let me put it into the CRM, because like I only want some data from ZoomInfo, some data from Crunchbase, some data from LinkedIn, and then associate that data to my ICP, which ZoomInfo doesn't know, right? Or Sixth doesn't know. My ICP is my ICP, which is different than yours. And so the innovation of SkillStack is really to like associate a wide variety of data points to the data points that you care for, the companies and leads that you care. And so I thought that the leads actual space was actually sold. There is a lot of lead companies that have actually lead in their name, but it is not. And the reason is because like even making sense of lead data, it requires the understanding of what's really important for you, which involves also like the type of companies that you want to sell into, and they are part of your ICP. So it's not only the buyer persona, it's their team, it's the buying group, and is this the right company, and are they showing the right signals? And so all of that are part of the lead prioritization. So that's a huge category for us. And I still cannot disclose it publicly, but a massive company that basically generates lots of leads via forms, like form filling for other customers, just signed up on SkillStack. So we're going to be embedded in their product to automatically enrich users of their customers who have filled forms. Like maybe you fill like a 3 or 4, like, or 5 fields in that form. And then what we append is like a number of attributes which are relevant for that customer, for their go-to-market, automatically, all agentic. And so this is going to be embedded into their product, and it's super exciting. Hopefully we can talk publicly about this like by the end of this year. And that's very interesting that the market is responding to that particular area. So I would say those three are the key. So CRM hygiene, account prioritization, and lead prioritization.
Anything that you're seeing at all around quoting in that process, the quote to cash process?
We are, we think that there is so much to do just in the top of the funnel to keep the troops well aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that by the time we get so down the funnel, we will eventually explore those things as well, but it's an area that we haven't yet. Um, our platform is totally modular, and so like, you know, we have integrations in and out of the go-to-market stack. We keep adding them, so like we are like an API first company, so like integrating new things is natural and it's part of the design of the platform. It is an area, so like if we do a good job in like solving the top of the funnel, like naturally we'll go further down the funnel.
Let's talk a little bit about, the evolution of agentic and just AI in general. Where do you see, the next 1, 3, and 5 years? And I put it in those categories because I think things are changing rapidly. High level, what do you see some of the biggest adjustments that are going to happen during those times? And I know get some of this is prediction based, right? Which you can always get yourself in trouble on. But I'd be curious from your viewpoint. You're seeing things firsthand. You're not just hearing about them. How would you categorize those things?
I started my career in mobile. So in the early 2000s, as I told you, I was born and raised in Italy. I started my career not in Italy. I never worked in Italy, actually. It's interesting. After college, I moved to Spain and started my career there as a consultant, but working on many different engagements all over Europe and LATAM and other places. And it was a company that was specializing in telecom and media. And so this was at the beginning of the mobile revolution, like, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. And back then, we made like all sorts of predictions for our customers that some of our customers were laughing about. What, like one of them was, oh, like there will be more phones than people. And at the time, like the penetration, it's called penetration of mobile phones, was, I don't know, 10%. So only 10% of the people had a mobile phone. And we were saying, we think there's going to be more phones than people. And customers are like, this is impossible to base the business case on this. The reality is that like there are more phones now than people, meaning like connected devices, and like, you know, everything is connected. So there are like, I don't know what's the penetration now. It's probably like, you know, 5 times or more.
I mean, you think about
Um,
watches, anything, right? All of
yeah,
it's
watch
connected.
anything. Yes.
Yeah.
So like each of us, so exactly. So if you think about the person, like each of us has like multiple devices that are
iPad, Mac,
connected. Right.
iPhone. I mean, it's just yeah, list of them.
And so another thing was, oh, like, you know, people will consume content on their phones and like watch movies. And I remember we put together these slide decks, which were like, you know, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of that stuff, but like I remember like visually, the visuals were like, you know, terrible, but they were trying to imagine the future. Remember, like phones were not like this device then, were like, you know, flip phones, really bad, like, you know, they were super small also, no? And so like the trend has been like the phones are bigger because we want to. And so the point of all of this is that all of the things that like the wildest things that we were imagining back then in mobile phones have happened and more. And so I have no reason to believe that the wildest things that we are imagining on AI won't happen. Maybe they will happen in a more refined format. Maybe they will happen like, you know, in a slightly different way. But I do think that this is like a technology that will change completely the way people work. I think as humans, I mean, I'm an optimistic, obviously, you know, since I'm building in this, I'm less concerned. Like even like for instance, like if I think about robots, we start imagining robots as like a person, right, with arms and stuff, and it's sort of like I think that it's actually assuming a polyform way. Like, you know, the robots that we're seeing, like we serve a company, Path Robotics, they build robotic arms, so it will be different. It won't be like the robots, like or like a person that walks. It will be a different type of thing. But so my point is that like everything will happen. it will happen faster than it's happened in mobile. And so my message is we better get ready. So we have now adopted AI like deep into the company. We expect every team to leverage AI to do every work that they're doing. And the way we are hiring also is changing. We are hiring people that are like maybe not engineers, but they are very curious about building, because like everyone needs to build in this new world. And like that's how you're going to continue to add like value for yourself and for the company. You need to build stuff. Even me now, I have like a built workflows for like recording my calls and then like extracting the insights and then having my little like agent that like suggests and recommends ideas. And I become much more powerful in like engaging with customers, filtered through my brain, but like with tools that like empower me and make me go faster and work better. And so my advice is that like for instance, I'm from Europe. Europe instinct is like, oh, let's put like constraints on AI because we are afraid that like impossible, inevitable, like Europe will be left behind if that's the mindset. So embrace it, learn, like, use it, learn how to use it in, a lot of different, like aspects of your life, because it's inevitable.
Yeah, I think it's some. I love how you hit on a couple interesting points. I think it's good you paralleled back to the mobile phone revolution and some of the predictions there. And I do think you're right. I mean, the rate of change now is substantially faster.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think in the next 5 years, like completely changed. So like, I don't know, like, I'm surprised, like, so you asked me 1, 2, 3 years. I'm surprised about like what we are able to do now that we couldn't do 6 months ago.
yep.
And so I start to see like basically agents talking to other agents to agree on a course of action, um, and super agents that coordinate the work of other agents. So it's and like let alone like the building of like the cycle of product development going much faster and iterating. So I think that that's in the next year. So like speed and acceleration in product development, like we've never seen. 2, 3 years is like complete pervasiveness in all aspects of the work of a company. We still spend, I mean, I have my podcast as well. I think we do still like way too much work manually. And like I just started like fidgeting with TikTok. I mean, you can already see like on TikTok they give you like, it's basically like a suite of editing capabilities pre-built, you know. So I think the next 2, 3 years will be like a complete change in the way we work. I think I read it or heard it from someone like software, like change and transition people from paper to digits. And so meaningful change, like, we used to have a ton of paper on our desk, and now we don't. And that's how software change work. Now it's like going into like manual, people, human workflows are going to be completely automated by AI. And so um, that's what we need to be prepared for. Like, how can I leverage AI to become smarter, to go faster, to build better? Because that's basically how it's going to happen. If I still do things like the old way, like it's just not going to be the same level of quality.
Couldn't agree more. And I think you're right. I think timeline wise, it's it's amazing. I think people that haven't aren't actually like looking at it right now, I think would be shocked at what's possible today. And to your point, well, it wasn't possible even 6 months ago. I think this agents, managing the agents and communicating with the agents, that capability just actually, just made things even more exponential,
Yeah.
even in and of itself. So last question I have for the day, and this has been really insightful and fun to talk through. you started at quite a few companies now. Talk to me a little bit about like lessons learned, some of the keys to success that you've had within doing that. I mean, now you're on. I think this is your third startup or fourth startup. I can't remember.
Fourth,
Um,
yes.
fourth. So yeah, talk a little bit
Two
about like.
exits, two exits, one failure, and skill stack. The jury's out, but I think we're doing fine. Um, Lessons learned, I think that I mean there are many, but I would say like for people that are starting, it's you've heard this already, but like that I suffered because I started a company that was not a painkiller, but it was more of a vitamin, and that's true. I think that like companies, I mean, startups are companies eventually. So, like, if they succeed, is because they become companies and not just startups, right? So, and a company needs to have a business model, meaning that someone needs to pay for whatever you offer. And if the probability of paying are lower because the pain is not so like big, so widely spread, and you know, but it's more like, oh, like, yeah, I need to take some vitamin every once in a while. And there is a huge vitamin, you know, business industry out there, but like uh it's very different in size than the painkiller industry. So
Mhm.
think about that first. Second, I think always, and especially in the age of AI, like, where we can build so much faster, always work backwards from customers and not from like your like ideal building. I think that another mistake that I made is like to get enamored with technology and then build towards like something, while like you should actually always start from a problem, painkiller problem, and work backwards, leveraging technology. So this is second. Third, I don't know, like I've done both. I think like now there is like how you can build like solo founders and stuff. First of all, like it sounds boring. I mean, it sounds like, I'm a social animal and I prefer to be with people than alone. And so maybe that's me. But eventually, like when, you know, things like become more complex and complicated, and like you feel like lonely building by yourself, so my advice is actually to always have a co-founder. I've done stuff without co-founders, and like the results have been less exciting and probably suboptimal than when I've had a co-founder. um, and then maybe the last one is about the fundraising. It feels that there is like this pressure to fundraise, that I find silly, because investors are super important and they help you accelerate, but like be aware of like the money that you accept, because it's very costly, and like it can distract you tremendously during the process, and even after. Managing investors is like part of the job. um so I would say like yes, raise if you need to raise only the amount that you need for the next iteration, and not a dollar more, because the vanity metrics of like oh, I've raised like X, will come. And I mean, all of the companies that raised in 2021 are struggling, or a lot of them close shop, even if they raise enormous amounts of money, because it was totally rational and they did not need that money for the level of development they had back then. So those are like maybe four insights that I can share. The scars to prove it, I guess.
Those are really good though, and I love that you hit on a couple of the key areas, and it's interesting because I would agree with you on the, I started my own tech company, man, 10 years ago by myself, and I vowed I would never do solopreneur thing again. So, completely agree of having other people in the trenches with you can take things a lot further. I think it's just a teamwork mentality, and I like the not being too enamored with the technology, focusing more on the problem. I think that one especially in even in the stuff we've been talking about today. I mean, you and I could geek out on this stuff for days. Like, oh, this looks cool, and we could go down this route, and that's fun. But it doesn't always lead to value and outcome, which is some of the big things we talked about today. So Appreciate you sharing the
Yeah.
insights. Thanks again for joining today. This has been a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you, Jesse.
For those of you listening, if you aren't following the podcast, please click like, subscribe. Also, Elio is on LinkedIn. He also has his own podcast. What's the name of the podcast again?
Revenue Engine Masters by
Revenue Engine
Skillset.
Masters. So, check that out as well. But thanks again for joining, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thanks again. Talk to you guys later. Cheers.